After months of off and on negotiations, a peace agreement is in place to end South Sudan's brutal war. President Barack Obama heads to New Orleans, Louisiana as the 10th anniversary of the devastating Hurricane Katrina approaches. And a new law is enacted in Somalia to end female genital mutilation. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. After months of off and on negotiations, a peace agreement is now in place to end a nearly 20 months of brutal fighting between South Sudan government forces and the opposition led by President Salva Kiir's former deputy, Riek Machar. Mr. Kiir himself expressed doubts about the pact holding even before signing the agreement Wednesday during a ceremony in the capital, Juba.
We will sign this document, but I warn you, you regional leaders, to stand with us in the implementation. Otherwise, we may spoil it if it is left to us. There is now fighting today, and that fighting was uncalled for.
Rebel leader Riek Machar signed the agreement last week, but he too expressed concerns about the stability of the pact. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says both sides should not allow their reservations to stand in the way of them achieving lasting peace.
Is that I know some have reservations. I will appeal to you to set aside those reservations, to look at the greater picture, to look at the people that you lead, to look at the need for peace, to look at the need for unity.
The United Nations Security Council threatened sanctions against South Sudan if Kiir failed to sign the agreement. The deal follows months of negotiations hosted by Ethiopia and several broken ceasefire agreements. Now, while the signing of the peace deal is being welcomed, some are warning that international attention needs to be maintained to ensure that peace holds. For more perspective on the situation, I'm joined by Dan Sullivan, Policy Director of the United to End Genocide. Mr. Sullivan, welcome to Africa 54.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so while people, or some people might be celebrating, you kind of feel like there is a need to sit back and watch a little bit and kind of think through this thing.
That's right. Yeah, there's certainly some celebration because this is the best peace deal we've seen since the start of fighting some 20 months ago. But there's a long way to go still. So the international community needs to remain vigilant. International pressure was critical to bringing this about and is going to be critical in making sure that the peace is actually implemented.
What do you make of the fact that both leaders say they have reservations about this deal? It was kind of pushed on them by original leaders.
Yeah, I think that that shows the importance of the international pressure from the regional group IGAD, South Sudan's neighbors, and from China, the U.S., the UN Security Council. The latest on the reservations, you know, President Kiir had presented 12 pages of reservations. The latest on that is that the U.S. and others are saying that he signed the agreement, which is there, and those reservations do not apply.
Yes. Now, given the history of South Sudan, what can the international community do? We know that they have reached some kind of pacts in the past, broken them, gone to war.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a long history of broken peace agreements, and since 20 months ago the violence started, there have been at least 8 different agreements that have been violated. So what's really important is the international pressure. There was the U.S. had threatened a UN Security Council resolution that would bring an arms embargo and targeted sanctions at some of the leaders in South Sudan who are refusing to go along with peace. So that needs to be kept up.
What is your assessment of the situation on the ground in South Sudan, the humanitarian situation especially?
Yeah, unfortunately, though, the peace agreement is a glimmer of hope. It's amid immense suffering. There's over 2 million people have been displaced, and there's 200,000 people staying at what are called civilian protection sites that the UN has. And something like 70% of the population is facing the dangers of hunger in the coming months. So having a peace agreement and actual ceasefire, which is supposed to come in within 72 hours, will be critical to helping the people who are suffering right now.
What about the issue of holding people accountable for what has already happened, for all the atrocities?
Yeah, that's going to be one of the most important follow-through activities. The United Nations set up a panel of experts who just came out with a report that shows more atrocities. Atrocities have been committed on both sides: rapes, burning of people in houses, all kinds of horrible things. So that needs to be addressed, and part of the agreement does include a hybrid court, but how exactly that's going to be played out is yet to be seen. But yes, accountability is critical.
And in terms of specifically the United States, some see it as having a kind of a bigger hand in ensuring peace in South Sudan. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it absolutely has a critical role to play. I was in South Sudan on the day of independence, and you could feel the joy that was going on. And a lot of that came from the United States stepping up and pushing that forward. And this latest agreement, President Obama's most recent trip to Africa, he really prioritized this. And as I mentioned, at the UN Security Council, the U.S. Really drafted this potential resolution that would threaten arms embargo and targeted sanctions. So the U.S. really was a part of midwifing this country and has a special responsibility and needs to keep that up.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you very much for your perspectives.
Thank you.
Well, Dan Sullivan is Policy Director at the United to End Genocide. In the United States, police in eastern state of Virginia are investigating the brazen and senseless on-air killings of 2 television journalists on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the victims are being fondly remembered by a community still in shock. Africa 54's Esther Githui-Ewart reports.
The suspect in the shooting, identified as Vesta Flanagan, a former WDBJ TV employee, allegedly opened fire on reporter Alison Parker and photographer Adam Ward as they interviewed a local business leader near Roanoke. Parker's boyfriend, an anchor at the TV station, shared photos of their relationship that ended in violence.
Going out and doing live reports from areas that might be unfamiliar to you in times of day where there aren't many people out there. But no one ever thinks that this would actually occur, and yet it has. And she was in a safe place.
The family of the suspected gunman, who police say took his own life, released a statement expressing their condolences.
It is with heavy hearts and deep sadness we express our deepest condolences to the families of Alison Parker and Adam Ward. We are also praying for the recovery of Vicki Gardner. Our thoughts and prayers at this time are with the victims' families and with WDBJ television station family. Thank you.
The family refused to comment on a manifesto the alleged gunman sent to ABC News, in which he described himself as a human powder keg on the verge of going boom. Several social media posts after the shooting addressed to the victims specifically were suspended. Meantime, the person being interviewed at the time of the shooting is being treated at an area hospital. Esther Githui-Ewart, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. President Barack Obama travels to New Orleans, Louisiana on Thursday as it approaches the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which devastated the Gulf Coast city and claimed 1,800 lives. And Mr. Obama is expected to speak about the recovery of the city from massive floods and its potential for future growth as citizens work together on rebuilding the city and their lives. The storm that slammed into New Orleans on August 29, 2005, broke through protective levees and left more than 80% of the city underwater. Torrential rains and winds of up to 280 kilometers per hour pounded the region. 1 million people are displaced. Katrina caused more than $135 billion in damage, making it the costliest natural disaster ever in the United States. President Obama plans to meet with the city's mayor and residents in several neighborhoods that have worked hard to recover over the last decade. Well, New Orleans is spending millions of dollars to upgrade its infrastructure to support thriving industries and new entrepreneurial ventures. And as viewers Greg Fleckers reports, an influx of young, educated people has helped the city's revival.
Music still draws many people to New Orleans, especially young people, many of whom move here just because they want to live here.
I just decided, you know what, I love the city, I'm drawn here. I come here 3-4 times a year because I miss it so much, so I'm just going to move here and see what happens.
For people with an education or valuable skills, getting a job here is not difficult, thanks to revitalized industries and heavy investment in startup technology companies.
We are #1 per capita in terms of in-migration of people under 25 with a college degree.
New Orleans and the state of Louisiana have benefited from federal recovery funds as well as huge investments by private capital firms, both domestic and foreign.
Louisiana now is #1 per capita in foreign direct investments. We've had investments over the past few years from Europe, from Asia, from South America.
New Orleans began as a port city, and more than ever, it's linked to the world.
Trade is strong. The Port of New Orleans has doubled its throughput since 2009, they announced the other day, so that continues to be a strong part of the economy. But we're also branching out into new industries.
Many skilled people here work in industries like digital media that didn't even exist when Katrina struck 10 years ago. But the city's prosperity has not helped everyone.
While we're seeing increasing employment rates among white men, black men have employment rates at about 50%, which is as low as they were pre-Katrina.
City and state officials have started programs to train unskilled workers and improve schools, but reducing the income disparity likely will take many years. Greg Flakus, VOA News, New Orleans.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, European immigration issues take center stage at a meeting in the Balkans. Stay with us.
From science and technology, here's What's New.
What's new? A bicycle that can't be stolen. More than 15 million bikes are stolen every year worldwide, including 2 bikes from a Chilean inventor, Andres Roy. So he and 2 friends, Juan Jose Monsalve and Cristobal Cabello, designed an unstealable bike. They call it the Yurka. The Yurka has a frame that turns into a lock. Part of the frame swivels out. Another part of the frame is also reconfigured so that both parts are connected around a bike rack, a guardrail, light pole, whatever. Since the aluminum frame is the lock, cutting the lock would destroy the bike. Andres Roy says despite the innovative security, the Yurka looks just like any other traditional bike.
But we also wanted to make it comfortable, a traditional bike design. We didn't want users to have to carry around a heavy lock either, and our technology can be adapted for any kind of bike.
The bike costs around $500 US, but as of now, they're sold out. For VOA's What's New, I'm Todd Groshans.
Well, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is meeting Thursday with leaders of the Balkan nations to discuss Europe's worst migration crisis since World War II. The meeting in Vienna, Austria, comes a day after Chancellor Merkel faced down jeering anti-immigrant protesters in the eastern German city of Heidenau, saying a country has no tolerance for shameful and repulsive treatment of refugees. Several dozen people gathered outside a Heidenau refugee camp, center, booing and shouting at Chancellor Merkel. But the German leader rebuked the protesters.
Treatment with humanity and the dignity of every single person who comes to us is part of our basic understanding. This is what symbolizes Germany. What happened here is shameful and disgusting. That's what the mayor and the Prime Minister of Saxony, as everybody else I met here today, made clear. Together, we will do everything to show that Germany helps where help is needed, and that needs to be implemented in reality now.
Well, more than 250,000 migrants have crossed the Mediterranean to Europe this year, according to the International Organization for Migration. In the past few days, a surge of tens of thousands of migrants have traveled from Greece into the Balkans towards Western Europe. Countries on the front line of the crisis are demanding more help from their European partners, and Ridgewell has our report.
Step by step, Europe's biggest refugee crisis since World War II continues to grow. Authorities in Macedonia have switched tactics, laying on trains and buses to speed the migrants' passage north to Serbia. Visiting migrants in Macedonia this week, the foreign minister of summit host Austria said the European asylum system is broken.
We urgently need an overall European approach, and it cannot be that the refugees arrive from Greece, most of them without being registered, to then be routed to Macedonia.
Hungary says a daily record of 2,100 migrants entered from Serbia Monday. The country is racing to finish a fence along the frontier, due to be completed by the end of August.
If they're then blocked in Hungary, it's impossible to see where they can go next. At the moment, Serbia is not able to process many asylum seekers, and we know that they can't go to Macedonia. I mean, in Macedonia, it's even worse. Dysfunctional asylum system, some abuses against migrants. So where are these people going to go?
Many of the migrants are trying to reach Germany. Chancellor Angela Merkel, who will attend the Vienna meeting, called on European states to implement joint asylum agreements.
We're talking registering, minimum standards of accommodation and minimum standards of health care.
Berlin announced it will no longer force Syrian refugees to return to the country where they first entered the EU, normally Greece or Italy, to apply for asylum. But the influx has prompted attacks by anti-immigrant groups. This shelter on the outskirts of Berlin was due to house hundreds of refugees. It was destroyed in a suspected arson attack Monday. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Well, it's time now for Thursday Health Report, and joining us is Africa 54 Health correspondent Lino Madu to talk about a new technique that might save you some pain. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. A new technology developed by British scientists could dramatically reduce the need for unpleasant dental drilling. Developed by UK-based company Reminova, the technology can painlessly repair teeth by supercharging the remineralization of tooth enamel. Demineralization, which makes tooth enamel weaker and more porous, occurs when dental plaque bacteria ferment sugars in the mouth that in turn produce acid that pull out the minerals in the tooth. If not caught early enough, it results in dental caries, also known as cavities or decay. These can only be dealt with by drilling away the affected area and replacing with a filling of amalgam or composite resin, starting people on a lifelong cycle of repair and replacement. Reminova's technology supercharges the natural process of remineralization.
Trying to supercharge a natural process whereby there's a process called remineralization. It happens in your mouth all the time. And we've just found a way to make that a much faster process, driving healthy calcium and phosphate minerals into your enamel, and through a natural process it will bind on and add to the enamel that's there. This can make a major impact on global dental healthcare in that the availability of a caries treatment in developing countries, our treatment's much more portable and useful in that type of environment as well.
Reminova is seeking further investment to develop the prototype device into a model ready for use by dentists. The company says the market-ready device will cost about $10,000, with treatment packs selling for less than $10. Now, for many years, girls in Somalia have been forced to undergo female genital cutting, a brutal practice that has life-threatening side effects. However, as Abdulaziz Bilo reports, if a new law is enacted, those found practicing the act will face criminal charges.
Hope at last for girls in Somalia as the government signals its intentions to ban female genital mutilation. A brutal practice girls in Somalia have been forced to undergo for years. The practice is very popular in many African and Middle East countries. According to figures by the United Nations Children's Fund, female genital mutilation in Somalia alone stands at 98%. Among its effects are lifelong pain, infections, infertility, and difficulties during childbirth.
In the past, when girls were subjected to FGM, it used to be something the society was proud of, but it's no longer the same. People shy from being associated with FGM. Now, when parents want their daughters to undergo FGM, they opt for underground avenues rather than public. That's a clear indication that the number of cases has drastically reduced.
Now, the government is creating a clear policy that will end the practice. Religious leaders, community heads, and the country's lawmakers are considering legislation initiated by the Ministry of Women. Once the law comes into use, those found practicing the act will be arrested.
To all those who practice FGM, we have seen the effect it has. This practice has to come to an end. The ministry is also working on establishing a law to ban FGM. If anyone will be found practicing this culture, they will be arrested by the government.
Experts say a community mobilization effort will help end the practice and raise awareness of the law in a country where the practice of female genital mutilation is almost universal. The practice has been outlawed in 18 other African countries. Experts say eradicating the brutal practice in Somalia will take time, but banning it is a major step to ensuring that Somali girls will have a normal life in the future. Abdul Aziz Bilo for VOA News, Mogadishu.
That's our Africa Health Report for today. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, Lenore, thanks a lot. Now be sure to watch Lenore Madu's Health Report every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Meet a talented young African leader from Nigeria. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. The United States welcomes the South Sudan peace deal, but emphasizes it will take hard work to implement it. In the Central African Republic, the new UN representative, Parfait Onanga Anyanga, pledges zero tolerance policy regarding exploitation and sexual abuse. In Nigeria, the nation marks 500 days since over 200 schoolgirls were kidnapped in the northeastern town of Chibok by Boko Haram militants. Finally, in Gabon, the U.S. will use regional trade pacts to fight supply side of illegal wildlife trafficking from Africa to Asia. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Well, he is an artist, and two of his works of art will become part of the future U.S. State Department Diplomacy Center. He is Kunle Adewale, a young African leader and Mandela Washington Fellow from Nigeria. Kunle, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
And you do look like an artist. I don't. That's cool. Now, tell me a little, where and when you kind of started serious art in Nigeria?
Oh, okay. I started serious art in Nigeria as far back as 2001,
yes.
When I started teaching school kids and students and in schools on art education.
Yeah.
Then apart from that, I also work in the studio making paintings. My favorite materials are acrylic, and I love using the fabric so that my painting can have this textural effect.
Yeah. Now, there's so many artists across Nigeria. What do you think made you stand out, especially when you applied for this fellowship?
For me, I think that, sometimes it's not about what you do, it's about how you do what you do.
Yeah.
And my involvement in the community, I think, is one of the things that actually gave me that opportunity to be selected for this fellowship. Because as an artist, I'm using my visual arts for civic engagement, how art can be used to improve the lives of people within my environment. Like one of the things I do is I do therapeutic art class and programs for kids and young people living with cancer in Nigeria, and also children living with sickle cell, to creating a therapeutic program for them such that their lives can be improved and giving hope to the African child. So I think that's one of the reasons why I was selected. using my art for civic engagement, not just making money, but improving lives and touching lives.
As you did this over the years, did it ever occur to you that someday you will travel to the United States because of what you do?
Not at all, because, you know, sometimes people will do some things for reward, but personally as a person, I do my work basically because I'm passionate. And I think passion, of course, in the long run is profitable. So for me, I never had it in mind that one day I will come to the United States of America because of what I do in Nigeria. But I'm just doing what I'm doing because I love doing it. So I never knew that one day something great like this will come up.
So you tell the young fellows there or anybody, just do what you're doing, just do it and do it well.
Yeah.
Question, now you've come, you've had this wonderful experience. What do you take home? What do you take back home?
For me, this program has given me opportunity to meet professionals because what Yali has done is to connect us to people who are already in the field of what we're doing, who can serve as mentors, who can help us to navigate our course there in Africa. So I've been able to meet a lot of professionals here in the United States of America, and I think that is also a take-home for me because I need a lot of mentoring. And I remember very well that when I was growing up, I had no one to mentor me. In the kind of environment I grew up in a violent environment filled with crime, I had no one to teach me or tell me where to go. But today, being in the United States of America, meeting professionals who can serve as a mentor to me, that will also make me a better mentor back in Africa too. And that is true. The number 3 is there's a program in the United States of America called Art in Medicine. And most of the institutions you have in the US, they have this program where they use art form as intervention for alternative in medicine. So that's one of the things I'm taking back to Nigeria, where music, dance, paintings, drawing can be used as alternative of intervention for people within hospital space, those who are living with cancer, those who have HIV/AIDS, those who are at the rehabilitation center, among many others.
Very quickly, if you had an opportunity to speak to an African leader or African leaders, what would you tell them they could do to recognize and nurture and help young and upcoming African leaders?
For me, it's important that the governments create platform where youth are appreciated and recognized for their efforts. And I think also that the government need to consolidate the effort of many youth. Now, there are many youth who are very skillful in Africa, but you know what? They lack support. They lack platform. So what I would say is the government should provide more platform where the skill of youth in the community can be appreciated and can be celebrated too.
Right. We hope somebody is listening. Thank you very much, and I wish you so much success in whatever else you do after this, yeah?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kunle. And now, Kunle Adewale is a Mandela Washington Fellow from Nigeria. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. And from all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
There have been many stories on climate change and the effect it might have on our planet. You might have heard this word in one of those stories.
Irreversible.
Rising temperatures will bring more extreme weather, food and water shortages, and irreversible changes to ecosystems that result in coral death, forest loss, and species extinction.
Irreversible means that something that has changed cannot be corrected. Our story talks about the harmful effects climate change, also known as global warming, might have in our world.
If there is irreversible damage to the environment, it cannot be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word irreversible, you will know what this newsword means.